All right, we're going to get cracking. Welcome everybody to May's Friday Live. This is a bit of a last minute Friday Live because we've been super busy um, working on some new things and going to some different events. So I'll talk about that in a little bit today. Meeting is recorded, so keep that in mind if you want to watch. If we've missed anything, you can always find our recordings at www.fmbetterforms under the Awesome Better Forms link at the bottom of the page, as well as on our YouTube channel. This month, we're going to talk about or share some lessons learned about working with generative AI, and we want to introduce a new tool for you as well, which I'm kind of excited about. I don't know how many people are going to use it right away, but well, hopefully they will. We had the opportunity to visit AWS is one of the offices here in Toronto, and for a generative AI day, and we'll share some slides from that, which we think might be of interest to everybody there. And once again, if you do need to grab any clips or links or anything like that, you can find that stuff. And we got the wrong date on there. That's okay. Quick note, we do have an upgrade to our Better Forms base code that is not automatic. Most of them are going to be automatic going forward, but occasionally there are some changes that are a little bit bigger. So rather than risk rocking anybody's boats, we've been pretty good. We've found a couple small bugs, not initially, but as people started migrating, and we've already patched those. The latest version of the Better Forms base code is under BF latest, and there is also a slightly newer version that addresses some smaller items that were discovered, and that's called BF staging. Some of the features that I'm going to show today are only available in BF staging. They're not available in latest, but that'll eventually roll out around July, August, September, sometime of that time, but it's available for you now. So I think we'll get started right away and tell you about I noticed Eduardo came on the call here. We'll tell you a little bit about AWS, one of the events that we just recently attended, and it was called Modern Day. This is not my typo. It's actually called Modern Day Strategy for Gen AI. That was the name of their event. And what it was is it was geared towards executives and decision makers, visionaries, that type of thing, on how we, because that's sort of all everybody in our community, how we can use AI for our clients or our software, our products. I thought it was actually pretty good. We were really unsure of what it was going to be like before attending. We had no idea if it was going to be really technical talk or if it's going to be like, here's a bunch of our services and please use them and crank up your AWS bill or what. So it turns out make that maximize. Turns out that it was pretty decent. Couple quick things I noticed. AWS, this is in the Amazon building. They haven't updated their password in 5 years. So I thought that was kind of funny. Um, but nonetheless, the building is located downtown. And it's on like the 26th floor, so they got a really nice view. It's quite an interesting environment. If you've been to Claris Engage, seeing an Apple building and seeing an Amazon building are like night and day. The difference. The Amazon building is, they've got all this kind of Amazon orange color all over and signs and things like that. And Apple's pure white with no signs. So it's very different. What I'll do is I'm just gonna tell you my takeaways, and hopefully some of that you can sort of vicariously get some benefit from. I thought this was interesting. 80% of companies are going to will have incorporated some type of AI, not just using like ChatGPT, but incorporated into their actual products, whether it's generative applications or tying into some type of API and so on. And that's this was predicted in October 2023, so 6 months ago or so, 7 months ago. And I think, like, if we could get maybe just a show of hands, I'm curious to see how many people in our community have incorporated AI in a product that they've built, either for in-house or for their clients. And we'll just take a quick survey there. I don't know how you put your hand up. So that's like nobody for so far when I see one, two. All right. And myself is 3. Hold on. I think I can go like this and put my hand up. Yeah, no. This one? No. Okay, there we go. So three people out of 3, 6, 9, 12, 13, 14. So that is that's really low based on this prediction here. And I think this is something that we can really sort of maybe leverage a little bit more and offer our community. Fortunately, Claris is actually making really, really big strides, I think, really big efforts in being able to offer vector searches in the next version of FileMaker, which will really be pretty big. But I wanted to talk today primarily about generative AI, and I'm not sure if everybody understands the difference. You can take regular data, tokenize that, and convert it into embeddings. Embeddings is like a vector representation of your data, and you can do searching on that. So you can do searching by meaning or context. And that's really, really powerful for most FileMaker data. But a lot of us have some databases where you'll have email templates or communication, that type of stuff, where that's more paragraph oriented. And that's great for searching. But what if you want to generate some of that stuff? What if you want to give assistance to the to your end users? So here's some different ways you can use generative AI. And generative AI would be like the streaming type stuff that you see where you're actually generating tokens. So here's so I thought this slide was pretty decent. I'm skipping quite a few slides. I'm just kind of picking the better ones that I thought from this event. Um, and they broke it down into these categories: chatbots, virtual assistants, AI-powered contact centers, and personalization for enhanced customer experience. So those are things that are sort of along the lines of oriented stuff. Currently, we don't have any AI in support from a support aspect, and that's something that we were originally interested in. But at the time, a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, it was a lot harder to incorporate that into your business. Now there's a lot of new tools, and I'll mention one or two of them later on that are make it a lot easier. Um, Productivity boosting, so conversational search. So that's basically semantic type searching. So you're searching by meaning and context. Summarization, code generation, which is what we use Betterform's AI assistant for, and data to insights. Creativity and content creation. I'm not sure. Is anybody using AI for marketing in any fashion? Marketing or content or communications in terms of emails? We do another show of hands. I'm just curious for that. If so, going once. So what's going on? There we go. One person. All right, two. There we are. So I think this is super low-hanging fruit. Um, it may not be the best, but getting something is better than nothing. We use AI quite a bit in our marketing stuff. And we just have a prompt like for the Friday Live, and we just say, hey, this is a whole bunch of information on the background of the company and what we do, what Friday Live is, and then just add the details, look it over, make a couple tweaks, and it's done. It's not perfect, but it's better than missing the whole event altogether, which is what would have happened if it was up to somebody to write it from scratch. And improve business operations, document processing, process optimization. I'm not sure, Eduardo, they talked about it says cybersecurity. You mentioned this as well. I'm not sure what they're really referring cybersecurity in and how you would use AI for that, other than in some type of smart tool.
Yeah, I don't know either. There might
Maybe it
be
was
like
just
some, yeah, like some tool that's being developed already, or it's in development that maybe would try to see some sort of pattern or something that would could maybe wouldn't react, but would identify or a threat or something. I don't know.
right. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it was just they added that bullet on to make the columns even. Um, This was really important, and this is honestly, some of this talk was very Claris-like. Fall in love with the problem, not the solution. And they're basically saying instead of trying to just add AI into everything that you do and say, hey, we're just going to add AI and it's kind of useless. And I think a good 50% of the companies have attempted to do that. Just before the call, I was showing how Zoom has this AI what do they call it? Their AI assistant, and you can get an emailed summary of the conversation. But the summary is like massive. It was like 3,000 words of a summary. There's no summarization there, so it's not really dialed in. It's not an ideal thing. Um, I think what Zoom would be really good if I was Zoom, is to maybe do things like automatic generation of links inside inside the chat window, because that's a big thing. Share that information. Say, hey, I'll let me copy and paste you that link, and it does it. That type of thing, or it gives you not just the insights, but maybe detailed explanations. Or if it's something's really technical, and you say, and it knows you're not technical, maybe it can simplify the context of what's happening in the conversation, so people can follow along and not just nod their head. Um, so I thought that was kind of good. Is thinking about the problem and the other real big takeaway here, and this was stressed by a whole bunch of people who were talking. They had about six talkers or speakers, presenters all together, and it is to iterate frequently, right? It's like an agile methodology, but the iterations don't have to be like, oh, we're producing version one of our assistant version two. It's just to start using some AI into things. For example, if you're just using it manually, you're using Chat GPT, and then you're starting to do something more complex later on. Maybe you're having a saved prompt in a notepad and pasting that in. So you're using GPT in a little bit better fashion. Then maybe later on you're integrating into some other app, or you're calling an API and summarizing that text automatically. You know, it's really exceptionally easy to use. Um, to do that. And I think that's a real key takeaway, is to do these iterations. We started iterating 2 years ago, but unfortunately, I found the API for OpenAI wasn't good enough, in the sense of it wasn't fast enough and it couldn't generate the code. And now we're sort of, and it was also proportionally too expensive, or at the time, but now it's in a nice sweet spot. The other really big takeaway that they're really pushing a lot is to harvest your data. And I'm thinking, well, that's exactly what we all do as a community, right? We all have tons of data. So they were really talking about taking all of this data, whether it's from your devices, your clients in some fashion, your apps and your logs, the data that's in there, and any third-party data. So maybe any APIs. And I don't think Jesse's on this call, but he showed me some really neat stuff that he's doing. Maybe we can get him on sometime. Where they're taking these third-party APIs and pulling all this data in. And then you're just taking that data and you're throwing it in some kind of data lake, which is basically just a giant bucket of unorganized data. And you're throwing that data at your AI, and then you can do queries on that. But as with anything, if you're putting a bunch of data into a big lake, a big bucket, and then doing queries on that, you have to think about governance and how you're going to make sure that any data that comes out for client A doesn't have um, nuances of client B in it, and so on. So you have some data isolation. So that security aspect is a really big thing. And AWS has some tools. I think it's called guardrails they have for that as well. They're doing these output into for three different areas: machine learning, so generative AI. So that's like the content that we're talking about today, and then business intelligence, like BI type things. They did do a little bit of talking about the services that AWS offers. You know, they have like, a couple hundred services. They never made any comments about how terrible their documentation was. Um, but as soon as they were in the talk, and as soon as they said about the services, Eduardo and I looked at each other and like, yeah, okay. If you ever try to use AWS docs, I think they're kind of terrible. Um, but they services kind of sit on three layers. This is all low code stuff. So low code or virtually no code. Amazon Q is a system for integrating third party data sources in. And Eduardo, you've used Amazon Q before, yeah?
Yeah, I was part of their workshop last week, I guess, I believe. And then, yeah, it was cool. They were showing how Amazon Q works and how can you use it. And I did a quick one by using their internal model, whatever. I forgot how it's called, but I used that as a the chat, the base model for the chat, and then they taught us how to link to make it more personalized, so to link to external data. So then I linked to our docs and our forum, and then yeah, then the chat kind of was able to understand and answer questions about better forms.
So
And it
that's
was
really
very
interesting.
simple. Yeah, like no code.
So you pointed it to the forum, and you just pointed it to a URL,
Yeah,
right? There was no,
everything
it's
was
not
just
really an
URL.
integration that you have to do.
No zero integration, just paste the URL and then they do all the crawling and indexation, everything.
Right. Which is pretty neat because that means you're building this chatbot and you've done virtually no code. So if you have a data and some type of an API endpoint or a site, like in our case, we have our Slack, you can point it directly to Slack, but you can also point it to our forum. Our forum is not a mirror of Slack, but it has most of the Slack good bits in it um, for posterity. And you basically get this smart chatbot. How good was it? Did you find when you made it?
Well, we didn't test too much. Like they give us this kind of dev environment for like 24 hours, but by the questions I made and things like that, like was pretty good. I was able to find information and then it links for like it it makes the response and then it actually showed the links where it got information from. So then you can refer to that and check the actual page. So yeah, I think it was pretty good.
Cool. So that's their set of low code tools. And then obviously there's other companies that have built stuff as well. Um, the next set is basically more API oriented type tools. Amazon Bedrock is a large language model integrator, so it can integrate some other third party LLMs like Cloud and Llama and some other ones. Um, but what it doesn't, obviously, they don't use OpenAI because that is a Microsoft company, right? So they don't have that in there. But nonetheless, this is a layer that these two layers typically would be the ones that our community would interface with. And then finally, if you're a real whiz kid, they have infrastructure and low level services and tools for doing actual language, like actual training. So they have right down to GPUs available and so on. So if you're doing some type of data science or something like that.
Yeah, even the things we didn't know, like the hardware, they said.
Yeah. Like I wouldn't know where to go otherwise for like if I needed 1,000 CPUs or GPUs.
Yeah, no, like they're doing their own
Oh yeah,
hardware
that's right.
too.
Yeah. So that's something that I didn't know about. They actually making their own silicon. So just like say Apple does or Nvidia, uh, AWS is as well, and that their machines are running on that. And I think actually they have some instances that run on their own stuff too, like one of the EC and EC2 instances. I'm not sure what version it is, but it runs on their own machines. It's a little bit cheaper. Skills. This is just kind of simple. I think this is kind of obvious, but I figured I'd include this slide as well. Is they just talked about the different skill sets that you're needed. There's the hard skills, which is the coding related things, and the soft skills, which is the creativity. Um, and I think sometimes we're more, I don't know, this is not exactly a right and left brain, but I think sometimes our community is maybe doesn't always have the visionary aspects, or sometimes we have too much visionary aspects and we don't have enough hard skills to make the visionary stuff come true. So a good balance is really important there. And this was something that you're hearing a lot of lately, RAG or retrieval augmented generation. And basically, it just means that the LLM can search your data, and then it takes that data and then it does some action on it. We're actually our AI assistant is kind of like this in the sense of we're passing in additional data. We're passing in the data model. We're passing in the your base code. The next version is passing in a list of your named actions. So we're starting to grab more data around your app. and pass that into the LLM, and then that gets processed and comes back and does stuff. Um, what they didn't talk about is tool usage, and I think this is more of a very specific thing to each model, and it's not so much to their AWS infrastructure. And tool usage is when the LLM comes back and says, I need to check the temperature because I don't know the temperature. So it actually can call. It doesn't do the calling of the API itself because that would be putting that layer of communication onto the third-party company. That's your responsibility. So it comes back and says, hey, can you please call the get temperature, get weather API for me and give me the results? And here are the parameters that I want you to search for. I want you to search for Toronto and for June 1st. Then you in FileMaker or whatever your platform is, you would make that call, take that data and send it back as part of the message back to OpenAI or I'm using or whomever. And they would take that data and it would put that together in the prompt and says, it would say something like, for your trip that you're planning to Toronto in the spring, we recommend wearing these types of clothes because this is what the temperature looks like it's going to be. So it can generate those really complex things. So that's not exactly RAG, that's tool usage, but RAG is very similar idea where you're just fetching all this other stuff. You can see they're including pictures, JSON, CSV files, text, PDFs, and so on. We actually, when we released the Vision API or Vision Assistant 3 weeks ago, that we're actually passing those types of things in as well. Oops, sorry about that. If you're interested in sort of from the visionary aspect or looking for new things that you can offer your clients, they do have a number of these events. They're free. And there's some other bonuses as well, but here's a list of some that are coming up. And Eduardo, where can we find I think they have an app. Let me just see. There's an AWS events app. I don't know if it
Yeah,
has all
but
the events.
they have a website too. If you go to AWS events, and it should have, yeah, all over the world.
They're pretty decent. They're not,
Europe, Asian, yeah, everything.
yeah. It wasn't about using their services, which is what I'd really expect. All right. I really was expecting the big sale. And it wasn't so much that. It was about this particular event was about coming up with new ideas. And I thought that was really, really useful. So I wanted to share that with you. And there's one other thing too, is they had phenomenal food. So this was an event that the dinner was sponsored by one of the DevOps companies that is the top partner in Canada, apparently, with AWS. So they're pretty big and they sponsored this. And I imagine they do that with every area as well. So at the very least, bring your family and go for food, learn some AI. Any questions about any of that at all? Right. I hope that gives you a little bit of an idea. Maybe you can come up with some things. What I'd like to do now next, and is I want to talk about how you can use. I want to talk about a couple things. I'll talk about our AI assistant, which I think everybody's played around with a little bit, um, and where we're going with that, and also what you can. Some things give you a new tool that you can start to use with your own in your own apps. So I think everybody's used our AI assistant. Is there anybody actually who has not used it? If you could put up your hand, if you've never used it before for anything? No? Okay. All right. So I have some schema here and I have a page. And I'm just going to quickly show you kind of the assistant and it just has an image tag, but maybe we can blow this out or something. Here's some data on some player stats. And you can, starting off, just to make sure that it understands what it is, you can just say something like, what is this? And it comes back right away with the response. We've recently changed, this is sort of version 2, if you will, of our AI assistant. And version 1, if you remember, you had to wait and wait and wait. Version 2 takes the exact same time, but it doesn't feel like it at all. You think, wow, this is so much faster. And it's just, like, obviously, it's just perception, right? So it really does understand the concepts of what this data is in here. It's a bunch of player information. And let's just go and create something here. So I'm just gonna blow this out of here. And if you haven't experimented with GPT too much with voice input, I find voice input much better. And it's not because I'm a terrible typer, but it's because we can convey so much more information in our voice. We're more verbose. Using my player stats data, create some type of dashboard, make it colorful, and highlight some information that you think would be important. That's not something you would normally write, but it is something that you would say, right? And that's sort of on the way of how it's been trained. So you can already see it's developing this player stats dashboard here, and it's doing a pretty decent job from the looks of it. It's got like a dark theme. There are some fine nuances where the AI assistant is not as ideal as it should be, and I'll tell you about some of those. Um, so this is using OpenAI's API, and it is using version 4.0, which is their most recent one that was released about maybe about a month ago or so. So some of the things I've noticed about 4.0, you can see here, we do have some prompting. The LLM doesn't respect the fact that we have some existing styling in our app. It thinks it has no styling at all. And in version 3 of Better Forms Base Code, we'll remove that totally. But in version 2, we still have the styling. So you can see that it's actually not adding the color into here. So if I look at this user object right here, this one right here, it's it's adding text weight to the very topmost div, which normally would be fine because that would propagate all the way down. But it doesn't propagate down when you have existing style sheets that are theming up or styling up H1 tags. And although we've tried to prompt that out, it still sometimes does this. One of the things, and I'll show you some of the differences between the different models and how they perform in a second. So that's the AI assistant in general. Now, let's talk about how it works. And that's what I want to sort of go through today. So I'm going to jump to this screen here. This is sort of the way version 1 of the AI assistant worked up until a month ago. Sorry, I'm just moving my windows around so I can see it myself. Actually, I can probably get rid of that one. Give me a second. I'll open it up over here. All right. So basically, it was just a traditional Better Forms architecture. So you have Better Forms Cloud up here. You have your device over here. You send the hook in, and that hook would have information like the prompt. And in our case, we're passing additional information. We're passing like the data model. We're passing the source code. We send that to Better Forms Cloud. It runs through a regular hook through whatever gateway you want into your FileMaker server. FileMaker was doing a insert from URL, a curl request to OpenAI's API endpoint, waiting for that to come back. Now, it's really slow, and you know that this would time out in 20 seconds, and almost all prompts take longer than 20 seconds to generate, especially with some of the older, slower models. So what we actually did internally is we released this call. So we would run perform script on server, which we'd call here, and we would let this call come back. So it would terminate right away. Then we used messaging, and messaging came from the server, and it went back to the to the device, and it would just dump the results in one big block. So you'd wait, it wouldn't time out, but you'd wait, and then all the data would come back. And that's okay. It's a good start, but it's not a great experience. And if you're not patient, it's really, really, really annoying. So version 2 takes a slightly different architecture. So here's what we did here, and we'll take this all apart in time. So basically, we have our device, which sends a hook to the cloud. The hook runs a script in FileMaker. That script generates the prompt, and it calls a new service that we've added, and that's available to you today. Sound like Apple. It's available already, and it is called the BF Streaming API. And basically, the way it works is it does a post request to the streaming API. This API sits inside every one of your apps. So you already know that you have a few endpoints. You have AP/API, you have slash Is it messages? Messages? I think it's something like that. I think messages, messaging, something like that. Create message. There's a few endpoints that are available in our docs. And this new one here is slash stream create, it's called. And what that does is that creates a real-time stream, data stream. It's just basically it's a special call that goes to Open API or OpenAI, or in the future we can connect to other LLMs as well. It's not a it's we try to keep it loosely coupled so that we can add these other services as people need them. That returns in about maybe about a second, right? That second says, okay, we started to create the stream. And then it starts to send more data as the tokens that get generated. Now, the way these tokens, when you're using something like ChatGPT, the way those tokens get generated are in real time. So as the computational stuff is happening, it's creating these tokens and they're getting converted back and you see them come in. So we take that and instead of returning that back to the hook like we did in version 1, we're immediately calling the Better Forms messaging API. We do that internally, but you can call it, we're using the exact same API as what you have for generating messages already. If you've never used Better Forms messaging, it's basically a mechanism for sending real-time push messages to any connected devices. You can also use this API to find out who's connected to your app, by the way, as well. You can get a list of all of the clients that are connected and authenticated and all of the ones that are not authenticated. So that's kind of handy if you ever want to get an idea of who's logged in and who's not. You can find that out. So the messaging API requires a channel. So the channel that it actually sends out on, and let me just pull this up, docs. You can see this just a second here. Start here, maybe go up a little bit higher. All right. So the gist is we have a few different channels, and I'm gonna find the exact page that has the channels on them. And a few different modes. We've had lots of Friday Lives on how to use messaging, so I won't get into it too much. But basically, one of the channels is the ID of the user. Sorry, no, that's not it. The ID of the tab. So each tab that's connected, each tab here, I got 2 tabs open. Each one of those has an ID. Plus, I have my own user ID too, but that user ID is shared. And in this case, we only want the streaming to come back into this particular tab. So we pass that in. Sorry, there we go. We pass that in, and then that streams the data back to here. When it gets to here, since it's messaging, messaging uses the actions bus, so or the actions processor. So it's effectively calling a named action. And you specify the named action that you want to call. It calls that named action and it executes it and it passes the data into that action, just like as options. So in other words, it works just like everything else in Better Forms, and it streams that data back. It happens really quick. You can see that. You can see the speed. These are actual messages that are coming in every time you see a token. In fact, the Better Forms network can stream a lot faster than the browser can keep up with, because in this particular case on this screen, where I lost my mouse here. Uh-oh. There it is. It's funny, I can see my mouse on my additional monitor, but I can't see it on my monitor. I don't know why. When you stream back, Better Forms in this screen takes the data that's on the left side, the yellow side, and it sends it into this app, which is in an iframe on the right side. So that's your actual app to preview. We've hidden the navigation bars and stuff, but that's just so you just see the content, and it's our page that's running in your app, if that makes sense. So we stream the data into there, and that can only happen so fast. So we actually throttle it a little tiny bit, and then you get this real time update. So if I say something like create a light theme instead. So something like that. These chunks that are coming in here are all messages that are coming in real time. So it's streaming from the LLM. The LLM some days is faster and some days it's a little slower. right? It's certainly not consistent, and you'll notice that difference in speed. You notice it in ChatGPT as well. I think we're going to see that for another year or two as everything gets stabilized. And there's my light theme of that app. Let's make. Can you add? I'm going to start again here. Can you add some type of toggle button in the top right-hand corner that can switch between light and dark modes? And we'll just do something like that. We'll see how that comes out. So that data is being streamed in real time. So that's how that works. So if you want to build something, let's look at a little more detail on how it gets built. I'm just going to let this go. There's a toggle there. Let's see how it wired the toggle. I click model.is dark mode equals not model is dark mode. So it's actually created a model is dark mode key. And it mentions it here in the end. Let's give it a try and see if it doesn't work. All right. And it might not work. There might be some different reasons. It might not work. It might be because this is just not instantiated. And let's try. So it looks like the button changes color and some of it changes color, but not all of it. So it's almost there, right? But that's pretty cool there. So it does toggle. I needed that key. It does toggle, but it doesn't look like it's changing all of the stuff. It's not changing this background color. So you can go back and reprompt it and fix that. All right. So that's sort of the architecture at a high level of how that works. How the scripting works is a little bit different, and I'll show you that next. So let's talk about what we'll do is we'll work from here. So in our AI assistant, we have an action that's called prompt enter. And when you hit enter on the prompt, it's going to assume that you want to initiate the conversation. So that runs a hook. And in our case, it's a hook set called utility. It's a generic hook. And I'm not sure if you've done this before, but what we often do is we find there's certain things like the AI assistant, what else, changing company and things like that. They're global type things that they're not really scoped to the page. I want to call them from any page, and hooks normally are scoped to a page. So you can add a key called hook set name. This is in the docs. Is that our docs? Nope, that's their docs. So you can add a key called hook set name, and it will allow you to, here it is here, we'll override the default and call this other hook set in there, right? So we can do this from anywhere. The hook set runs a script called it's a handler, and it's at this UI level. All of these scripts in here are what we call a UI level. In other words, they can return things like actions, and they can normally see stuff like state and actions and model and all of that stuff, all the stuff that's in a normal hook. And they all happen in real time in the hook. They're not running on a separate thread. They're not doing perform script on server here. So that's handling an assistant script. This one actually checks if it's version 1 or version 2, because we actually developed this a few months ago, but only pushed it out and then or 2 months ago and pushed it out 1 month ago. So it's pretty young and it's pretty green still. So we didn't want to release it to everybody because we knew it was going to be really buggy. So we actually check to see if it's version 1 and version 2. And I'll show you how we check that using a privilege set in Ham. If it's version 1, we just call it version 1 way, exactly what we did. Version 2, on the other hand, does a few things that are a little bit different. It, first of all, calls another API level script. So this is like a lower level script. This script has no idea about better forms, right? This stuff all knows about better forms up here. This stuff down here can be called from internally. It can do anything you want. For example, we have a log function that has nothing to do with better forms. It's just we just log the call, the response, and the request. The other API script here is called API stream create, and that is building our code that we need to generate this stream. We'll look at these in detail as well. So what that's doing is it's basically grabbing things like not your API, it's grabbing things like your API key, your prompt, your data that you're going to that the user has submitted that came from the front end. It selects the model, it selects the temperature and all kinds of things and some other small settings in the model, and then it calls an HTTP request script, which is just a curl wrapper or insert from URL wrapper that calls OpenAI. Right? Once we call OpenAI, actually, sorry, this is actually incorrect. Sorry, this calls the BF API. So that's my bad there. So this is calling the BF streaming API, and this is in the Better Forms Cloud. There we go. And that in turn calls OpenAI or whatever service that you want, and that starts to initializes the streaming. If the start of the streaming is successful, we log that just for debugging, and then we're done. We're done with this hook. So the hook runs in about a second, and you can kind of see that happen here. So if I undo this and I just do this again, I go 0, oops, oh, something. Let's try this again. What is this? 0, 1, 2. So about 1.5 to 2 seconds it comes back. And that time is the time that it took to call the Better Forms Cloud. The Better Forms Cloud calls OpenAI. OpenAI starts the stream, and when the first character comes back, it goes back into the cloud, and then it streams back, and it comes back into the app here. That takes about 1.5 seconds, which is much better than before. And ChatGPT is about the same time as well, right? So almost the same time because there's hardly any difference in overhead here. All right. Any questions about any of this stuff so far? Chris asks, are there specific things we should be looking for when testing the new Better Forms base code? Not really. It's actually almost identical. What the biggest thing is it has a lot of internal caching. We don't have Danny's asking anything to do with augmented reality. We don't, but I was going to have Joe. Oh, Joe, I'm so sorry. Joe, I can't, for some reason, I can't, his name forgets me, but he's kind of like our FileMaker community AR or VR guru. He works with Dave from Proofgeist on some stuff, and he's quite good. And so I was going to have him come on, and we were going to look at actually building some augmented reality apps. I'm not sure what that would be like in Better Forms, but that would be the idea. All right, so that's how that works in general in terms of the scripting. Let's look at a little bit more detail now on what we'll do is we'll take apart some of these scripts so that you can see how you can build this stuff yourself, and it's relatively easy. This may look like a lot of scripts. It's just because our architecture, we sort of use API first design. Yeah, you could put this in one big massive ugly script, but we prefer not to do that, so we can reuse chunks of code and we can version code. Like we have version 1, there's some more stuff here, and version 2, and it's really, really easy to do that. So let's start. Let me just pull up some things. And here is a utility hook. And this is the actual Better Forms utility hook. And from 2018 by the looks of it. And here we are, AI Assistant is the one that's calling, right? So in order to do that, we add that model, the key to select the hook set name. Right, so it's calling AI Assistant. AI Assistant's pretty small script. This is this script that's right at this level here now. And it is basically branching off. So we're grabbing some parameters, some stuff that we're passing in. And I'm also grabbing one extra object. And I'm grabbing this as it looks like I'm grabbing it as a global. No, sorry, I'm referencing it as a global. I'm grabbing a key called state. State has the information that we need that tells us what domain that the app came from, because don't forget, we got dev and production and staging. We got a couple of staging and some test environments. So we need to make sure we call the right API to the right domain, because each one is scoped for messaging. And we also grab state because it has the ID of the tab in there. Okay, and then from here we have ham. If you haven't used ham yet, this is a really easy way of controlling access to things. This is our dev server production when we modified it so that everybody has access. So it's changed around a little bit. Ham check privilege can use beta features. So we put this as a beta feature, the version 2, and we have version 1 as a separate feature. And we use ham a little later on as well. I'll show you in a second somewhere we do. And then from there, we are performing script AI assistant version 2. If not, version 1 it's running to the original version of the stream, the assistant. So let's jump into this guy. We'll follow that in here a little bit further. And I just realized, is this half off my screen? Is that on? Oh no, okay, it's just my screen. That's looks to me like, oh no, okay. Sorry, I'm just making sure that you can see everything here. All right. So this one's pretty simple. It's breaking out a bunch of variables, just for clarity. And we have one ham filter on here, and you can see if not ham check priv can use AI vision. So that's a privilege set that we've added in. So we've put the AI vision, the ability to paste images and things like that, as a pro plan feature. That may change, may not change, I'm not sure. The rest of the AI assistant works fine. So all it's doing is it's basically saying, if you can use the privilege, if you can't use the privilege, and you've included some files in there, then it's basically just kicking you out of this loop. It's single loop error trap, and it's kicking you back out and saying you need to have a pro plan for that. That's it. So that's pretty straightforward. And that's how easy ham is for that kind of stuff. Then what we do with ham is we take this feature, can use AI vision, if we're not sure and we want to give it for free to all the beta testers, because we have a number of people in our community that do beta testing. We just have to add that feature onto their plan, basically. We can add this individual feature, or we can put this underneath another plan called beta features. And if they have that enabled, they automatically get access to that. All right, merge template to message. So we're basically grabbing the template here. So let's have a look at how that works. It's using a get column, and it's grabbing a miscellaneous data from our data storage table, a key called assistant prompt and underscore or assistant type and template version. So let's have a look at what this is doing. This is really fetching one record out of a generic data store. And it's grabbing a prompt. So depending on the type of mode that your AI assistant is, this one's working in an HTML mode, but if I switch over to here, it's in a JSON mode, right? And what we're doing is, we're basically namespacing our prompts so that we can fetch the right prompt. So this one's called assistant prompt underscore JavaScript version 2. Right? And I'm going to go to the one that we just used. So here's our prompt that we're using actually internally. You can get an idea of what's happening here. So you can sort of, if you're trying to get some hints and things like that about making better prompts, there's a lot of sort of lessons learned here. But basically, you're at Better Forms, very brief FM Better Forms coding assistant for developers specializing in Vue and HTML. Questions, ask for code edits, return the complete code wrapped in triple brackets. So this was an important one. I'll explain why in a bit. And then there's a whole bunch of little tweaks and things. And then what we do is we merge in. There's some merge tags. This is not a Vue merge tag. I'm just doing a FileMaker merge, a replace here, and I'm replacing this with the model that comes in. So I'm passing all of this stuff in the system prompt. That's the first message of a series of messages. A list of our named actions. This is only in development mode right now. And the most recent HTML code. Since the developer iterates over the code a whole bunch of times, we don't want to keep sending bigger and bigger and more code. So it only sends the most recent one, and we just make a note of that. This is the most recent code. All right. And that's around 3K that we're sending there. So maybe 1,000 tokens or something like that. The context of the model that we're using currently is around 120,000 tokens. So we got lots of room there. So we fetch that generic data store. And I don't know if anybody uses this, but these are really just a simple table. It has a key, primary key. It has another internal primary key that we never use, but a primary key called ID owner. And you can tell how old it is because I don't use underscores in my naming convention, so it's pretty old. And we namespace those so we can grab that one. So that one's, if we change modes for the assistant, here's the JSON version. So it's underscore JSON, slightly different prompt. This one hasn't been dialed in as much for 4.0 yet. And here's the JavaScript one, right? So they're very relatively simple prompts. See how we're doing for time here. Yeah, very simple, relatively simple prompts. And we fetch that prompt. And let me just show you here. Oops. Did I stop my share? Yes, I did. There you go. All right. And then we take the prompt, we merge in some of our data. So this is pretty straightforward. So you can see I'm just substituting out those variables exactly as just regular FileMaker, right? Merge in our actual data. And we take out that first message. Now, when you reset this, you'll notice there's an actual message. That's actually part of the messaging array that says, ask for things or prompt and do these kinds of things. So we actually take out that first message and we replace it with the system prompt. So we're taking that out and we start to develop this first message object. And then we put this into the rest of our messages. So we're replacing the 0th one, the first one in this array, with the first message. This replaces, what is it? This replaces the user-facing instruction with a system prompt. There's just a simple note in there to understand why we're doing that. And then finally, we fetch functions. Functions are this really, really neat thing. And I think this is one of the things that for most of the community, this is something that you can really, really use. Version 1 of our app used functions. Version 2 is not using functions currently. What functions are is you define, let me just find a function here. Yeah, here's one here. All right, here's an example for let me use the HTML one actually, because I think that one you'll see best. I can find it, there it is. Okay. Here is an example of an OpenAI function. So what it is, it's a description. It's a JSON object or it's a schema of a function. It's not the function itself. There's no code in here. But it says, from the description, the model understands what the function does. So it's like the documentation that you'd have a function that you have on your end. And in version 1, we had a function called respond to user. And it says applies code changes back into the editor. Use this function when you have suggested code changes or comments that can be applied. And then you specify like the arguments. So you say there's two arguments. One is called code and one is called message. Code is the thing that goes in the box. Message is code is the thing that goes in the code editor. Message is the one that goes in the box. And then you give it you tell it what the type is. They're both strings, and then a returned HTML code that will replace the original source code. Leave empty for no code changes, right? So what will happen is in version 1, OpenAI, you make this request and it would come back and it would say, run this function. And it basically says, here's the name of the function and here's the arguments, and you do it. So you can imagine this would be exactly the same as perform script by name. And OpenAI would come back and say, please perform the script, create new invoice. Please perform the script, send email to customer, that kind of thing. And you can branch it off in FileMaker. And now you can call all of these sub-services that you've got built into FileMaker. And you can make this really, really powerful AI that has a lot of agency, ability to control stuff. All right, so that's kind of functions. We're not using functions currently in version 2 because we do find that sometimes it can be a little bit flaky and not all the models support functions. So we wanted to be able to do some comparisons. So we bypass them a little bit. I'll show you that in a second. Right, and that's basically the gist of it. We select the model. We can play around with different models and switch them around because they all have the same API. We select the maximum number of tokens on the return. This is just under the max. So you can limit this down if you're getting a lot of use case and you don't need to have too much crazy stuff coming back. And then we call the streaming API connector, which is this layer down here. So now we're right here, right there. And that we basically build up the shape of everything that we need. And we call that, let's have a look at what that looks like. And yeah, okay. So what this API is basically just creates a stream. We have a one comment. You probably do this kind of something like this too, because we're taking JSON arguments in, and it's really hard to test all of that stuff. We want to test it in small sections, so we have the ability to more or less inject some real information in our shite. Okay, shouldn't have done that. Oops. All right, gotta make a note for that. Next thing you know, I'm gonna get $1 million bill for an API key in there. Looks like I thought I removed them all. Hopefully I can trust you guys. And this is at 11:04. Sorry, guys. Okay. And oh well. We composed the URL and we called it HTTP script. This is a script that was originally made by Geist, and it basically is it's gone through lots of iterations, and it's just a wrapper around the curl functions. But it has a consistent endpoint, so it's really easy to use. Um, and we give that a call. So that's kind of the gist on that happens on that side. Any questions about how that works at all? Too much, too little, too much in the weeds? All right. So having said that, let's experiment with a few different models, and then I'll show you the back end a little bit here as well. So what I want to do is we have this UI here, and just to give you an idea of what like OpenAI has a number of different models. Everybody does sort of, but and they have different abilities. Um, GPT-4o for Omni is the most recent one, and it's multimodal. That means it can take in sound, it can take in images, and it can take in text. It has pretty big context window, 128,000 tokens, so it's pretty big, right? It's a lot of stuff that can consume. Its output is not so big. Where do they have the output? They don't have it listed here, but it's in here. I think it's only 4K or something like that. It's not nearly as big. There's a whole bunch. You'll see it'll look might be a bit confusing at first, but there's a whole bunch of different variations of the model. For the most part, what they do is they date their models and they namespace the version of it, and then they point the most recent one to that one. We do the same thing. You can have BF latest, or you can have BF. We give it a label on top called legacy right now, but it has a fixed version, whereas latest can have a variable version. And excuse me. So you can experiment with these different ones. So there's 4, there's 3, and 3.5. The biggest difference between these is the speed and the cost. So to give you an idea of costs, let me see if I can find it here. Here we are. Version 4.0. Let's go with the one we used up to a month ago. For 128K input for $10, output $30. So that would be the cost per 1 million tokens. GPT 3.5, 20 times cheaper at 50 cents and $1.50, significantly cheaper. Oops, sorry. Significantly cheaper. 4 is half the cost of 4.0 is half the cost of 4 at $5 and $15. So what does that work out to in real world things? On average, at any given day, we have around somewhere between 25 and 40 developers using Better Forms that are actively doing stuff. Some of them are using the AI assistant, some of them are not, right? So, but you got an idea if you sort of put yourself as being somewhat average, to give you an idea there. All right. So that gives you a little bit of an idea of cost. Now let's try experimenting with the models and let's see which model, how the actual model performance varies. So since I'm in our dev environment here, and I'm going to close this for a second, and let me just do this. And all All right. So right now, this is 4.0 for the model here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of all of this, and I'm going to say create a player dashboard with my data. So I'm going to use the same prompt, and we'll see, give you an idea of what the difference is. So let's try 4.0 first. And it's creating this. It's interesting that the first time I did it, it wasn't in dark mode. This time it's in dark mode. Get bonus points if you know why. The difference is it's using our actual data. It's actually nice looking too. It noticed is dark mode is one in the data. So it said, oh, you must want a dark mode. And that's why this one came out to be dark mode right away. And it looks like, I don't know, I don't think that's wired up to anything. So there's my dashboard for my game players, games, losses, and things like that. I'm going to hit undo. So it's identical prompt. Everything's the same. And let's try, that was GPT. Let me just do this. I'm going to take a screenshot of this so we can kind of compare these. And let's try GPT 3.5 now. And let's do this again. Now, in fairness, the prompt is not perfectly dialed in for 3.5, but let's see what it gives us. It didn't acknowledge the dark mode here. And it's got some of the stuff, but it's like, looks a little bit ghetto, right? So not so good. So I'm going to take a snapshot there. And that's the difference between 3.5 and 4.0. So this was 4.0. GPT 4.0. Sorry, guys. GPT 4.0. And this one is 3.5. 3.5. All right. And let's try now. These are all the same here, but we'll try version 4. You'll see a difference in speed. That'll be one difference. 3.5 is the fastest, but it also came back with less code in general. And let's try this one here now. The streaming, you don't notice the speed too much on a good day or slower days. Some days you'll see it like way faster though. You can see it's already looks a little bit better. It is definitely slower. Maybe not. Let's see. There's looks like there's some. Let's see what's this is. NDiv too early. I don't know. Is it? Looks like it's correct. I don't know what the issue is there. Else hyphenated word. So some funky stuff. Incidentally, if you ever get this, you can say something like correct my code, right? And you can just run it again. And it's usually pretty good at fixing stuff like that, right? Just see it. Again, I lost my initial prompt, but that's okay. It's supposed to come back with the exact same thing, right? This is a setting that you have in the API for OpenAI, and the setting, there we go. So it's actually fixed whatever was wrong with it, right? And it said something is dark mode is 0. It also fixed incorrect variable player rank, some other stuff like that. So it's actually fixed that up. So don't forget you can use it really, really well for that kind of thing. So this is the next version. And this is 4. Right. Now, what's interesting is they say that this model is like just like based off of this one, but there are significant differences in it. One of the things we noticed is we're trying to get, as developers, engineers, we're trying to get these deterministic results from an indeterministic or probabilistic computer, right? And so it's really that can be quite challenging. Create, I don't know, what was my original prompt? Create a dashboard with my data with, I think it was player dashboard, game dashboard. Do you guys remember? That's okay. Nobody's listening anyway. All right. So I think it was something like that. So I'm going to erase that so it's got nothing going in. So we'll go back to this one again. So you can set a couple variables. You can set the temperature variable. That's the amount of randomness from token to token, how far off the track it goes. And you can set a seed, which is the random number generator seed, so that it always goes the same amount in the same direction and should come up consistent. But it doesn't. Like, I don't know. We'll see what this one's like. See if this comes out to the same thing. It actually looks the same, but let's see. What was that one like? That one had a header on it. This one doesn't have the header. So it's not the same, right? Even though according to the OpenAI docs, it's supposed to be identical. And this one seems like a lot less. I don't think we've got less data, do we? Maybe. I don't know. I forget. I don't know. I don't think we touched the data. You only changed that. But I did it again and I got this. Let's see. Let's try it one more time. Create a player dashboard with my data. And this is version 4. So if you build it like that, it's pretty easy to test these different things. This one looks like the first one again. No, it's different, right? Again, the reason for the white text prompts haven't been perfectly designed to get rid of the better form stuff. It's not this thing's fault. It's better form's fault on that one. So that's the next one. So these are totally different results here. Oops. Command Shift T. Did I just close the tab? Did I? No, I didn't. And let's just do this and grab another one of those. Right. So, and that's totally fine. This randomness. If you're building most things, it'll keep most of your code. And if you say change this, change that, it'll only change the little things. It's pretty accurate that way. I think that covers mostly on how everything works. I didn't actually talk about the code on the receiving side. So let me just show you that. And I think that's the last piece of the whole thing to build. I did mention that the prompt that we're sending off and what the API looks like looks like this, where we're calling the here it is, the stream create is the name of the endpoint. It's a post method, and this is what the body looks like. Authentication is passed in as part of the object, so there's an API key that you pass in. So it's really easy. You don't to mess around with headers or anything like that. You do pass in the channel. It can be multiple channels, so you can actually broadcast to channels. You could send streaming AI if you wanted. I don't know what you'd use it for, but you could send it to every app in your system if you wanted to. I guess if you had some kind of automatic news generation and it streams the news in real time or something, or a translation app. Actually, a translation app would be kind of neat because you could stream all of that data in real time and have it stream into everybody's app. So it's really, really powerful and simple. Cost is reasonable. Here's the seed number here. That's the thing for the random number generation. And there's an example here on how to do this. This doc is available if you are looking for this, you want to start playing around. It's only this is really, really preliminary. Available. It's in BF staging right now. I'm not sure what that version is. But you can play around with that and how to do that. And the video will be available once we scrub it a bit. And let me just show you the last thing is how the uh, how the messages when we stream. So what's happening here when we open this up where we're sending that message back, we need to get this data into here or into here. Most of the time you won't have to split it up into 2 different places because you're probably not doing code generation. But let me just show you how that would work. One of the things we did is we actually built the assistant as a component. So it's an actual component here. Where is it here? Here. And to develop it, because components is kind of a beta feature, we um, we actually develop it in its own page, and then we just copy the code over so that we have a playground. So we've created like a little playground for ourselves where we have the assistant and we can make just various tests and things like that. We can experiment with I don't think this will collapse. It does. We can experiment with things. Um, we used a custom icon. This is a custom font awesome icon from our Pro kit for that, and so on. So we basically have the same data here, and then we can develop it. What I want to show you is the function that gets called when this is the last part of this here that we haven't looked at, is this part right in here. When this runs, this is calling a named action because messages effectively are just actions. And we're calling an action in here and it's called assistant to receive, something like that. Um, let me see. There it is there. Assistant receive stream. So we have just one action. So this is kind of the code that gets called from the Better Forms cloud when a prompt is starts to stream in. And I'm not going to go through line by line, but I'll give you the gist of what we're doing here, just so from a learning education aspect. We happen to know some basic information. We need to know the name of the editor. Is it the JSON editor, the JavaScript? Like where's the destination is? Because we need to be able to add that stuff in. And we start off with a temporary code and a temporary message object. So in other words, we start from empty. We're getting a stream, a little piece of code in, just a one little character like a letter A or a word. But we're rebuilding everything from scratch each time. And what we do is we take the chunk that comes in, and it comes in action options.chunk contains the stream data, and we concatenate it onto a stream content key in the app model. So we just build this longer and longer and longer stream. That consists of the entire prompt, include of the code and of the text. And then we're basically saying if that is a special type, if it's a delta, that's a certain type of, there's another key in there that says if it's a change, a little change, then we continue to stream it up. If it's the end of the prompt, then we know we're done, right? And then we do one other thing here is parse and update model incrementally. So we basically have to look because when the stream comes in, the stream has a whole bunch of text, right? It has some text. It says, sure, I can create your code. And then it puts some backticks and it says like JavaScript or whatever. And then it feeds your code. This is code like so. And then it puts three more backticks. And then it says, here's your code. Ask me any more questions like that. So it's stuck in the middle there. And that's because of the prompting. We said, please return the code as a block. So what we're doing is we're using some regex right in here to figure out the first chunk of code. That's this code block 1, code block 2, and code block 3. So there's a regex here, and there's the trailing one is from the very end. So sorry, remember that. There it is there. So 1, 2, 3, these all represent those code blocks. We're picking that stuff out. Regular expressions is just a way of identifying strings within strings based on certain parsing rules. It's a really, really powerful language, but incredibly hard to use. I use GPT, and even GPT's fallen over a whole bunch of times to develop these. That was probably the hardest part of everything. And then finally, we take all of that data that comes back and we concatenate it somewhere in here. Right here, final message, initial message, because the trailing comment. And then we keep the separate code, and we basically call a reference to the HTML editor, and we push the data in there. The editors, it was already designed, so as soon as code changes, it reflects into the preview. So we didn't have to touch anything there. Whole project, I think Hassan worked on some of the UI for this.
Yeah.
Yeah. How about, I don't know, how many hours did it take you probably to do the UI roughly?
The UI was probably like 15? Because like there's a lot of changes in between.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, all the
Like there's a lot
iterations
of variations. That's what took
there.
the longest probably.
I would say about 50 hours, the whole thing, the whole project then. Um, it took longer only because I don't get a chance to code that often, but that was the whole thing. It's not actually that much. The average use case, I think for the average app, if you're using streaming, it would be a lot simpler. We don't have examples for how to do this yet, but if you are interested in adding generative AI into your app, let us know. I'll be happy to work with you for free. And what we'll do is we'll actually code it into an example, but we'll use your use case into the example, which you can more or less just copy out later on, and that helps get an example for everybody else, all the future travelers. And I think that is the whole. I'm just going to look again. I think that is the whole thing, how everything works.
I'll be the
Any-
first to say it was awesome. I put about 40 hours in this weekend, and it I mean it's life changing.
I'm glad to hear that. I'm not glad to hear you spent 40 hours. Well, I kind of, but I believe it. It's pretty neat.
Yeah, man. It's creative, more creative than I am, and I can just say, hey, I don't like that thing. Give me a better thing. And literally said those words and give me a better thing. I mean,
Yeah, yeah. You're actually better off to do that because if you would have described it the wrong way, give me a better widget XYZ, it might interpret that too literally and, make a new thing.
right.
So
It was
cool.
awesome.
We've seen really good results from people. This is still really alpha or beta, I should say. There's a lot of tuning. You can see that 4.0 and 4 GPT-4. 4.0 does not follow the rules nearly as much. It's way more teenager-like, and 4 follows the prompting a lot better. And I think I know from the forums that other people have found the same thing. So we were having to redesign and redefine these prompts and stuff like that for this version. For the most part, you can use the same prompt for each one, and then you kind of add the nuances. We didn't bother abstracting out the variations for the LLM version into the prompt. So we could have namespaced that. And so there's a special prompt for 4 and 4.0, but it's a bit of a pain because there's like 4 records you got to copy over to production and stuff like that every time you deploy and stuff. Um, so we just left it. You will see a lot of changes happening over the next little while in it as we start to define it, because even this one here is not what you have in production. And it's already got a lot of little glitches and stuff taken out. So this will probably get deployed over the next, I don't know, handful of days because it's a pretty small delta. So you'll see that in your app. Okay, I think let me just jump over here. So that's kind of our journey, if you will, on generative AI. And we talked about the streaming proxy, and that's available already for you. Preliminary docs, you can find the docs in the addendums under Awesome Better Forms. I think there's a link there. And where we're going next steps, and this is where I sort of need your feedback from, is we are developing a fine tuning tool. I'll give you a real sneak peek of what that sort of looks like. It's not really super polished or anything, but basically what this fine tuning tool is this is a data store where we can take several other apps and push all these other apps can push data in. So we have Better Forms here. We have another product, Synergy, and some other future product. And we want to create fine tunings for those. So we push these into our tool like so. And they all have very different data. This one's probably mostly code. This one is a lot of text. And who knows what this one is? Maybe it's just data. And we push those into this tool. The tool creates data sets. So it's just another FileMaker file. You can do this. You don't need to do this in Better Forms at all. But our co-op student, Julia, is working on this, and this way it gives her a chance to build some front end and back end full stack stuff. So she's built this. So this is one of the data libraries. You have different projects. This is the AI assistant for Better Forms, and this is one for Synergy. And basically, oh, that's different. Basically, you gather these data points. So this is that's weird. I guess this is work in progress. I think she just added this the other day. So you have a set of collection of data. So this would be a set of collected data, and this is the data that gets pushed in. So you can create these more manual data sets on your own. Here's data 1, and here's data 2, and data 3, and data 4. You can adjust those data sets to tune them up a little bit. And then when you're done, the idea is that we can initiate a training sequence, and that'll push all of that data up, generates the JSON-L files that are needed for training or fine tuning. Sorry, there's a difference. And then we get back this model, which is really just a layer on top of the model that kind of guides the model a little bit. And it gets more data back. Now, why do we want fine tuning in Better Forms? Is because we can really teach it. We can reduce the prompting. So they say you reduce your prompt cost, but the cost of fine tuning, not that running the fine tuning process, but the cost of the tokens for fine tuning are more expensive, I think. So I think it's not really cheaper, but it's more accurate, way more accurate. And we can also tell the LLM about all the nuances of Better Forms. So that means that we can take our next version of our AI assistant, and we can throw it on a graphical interface and say, hey, just make these changes. And can you add validation to the middle name field? Can you conditionally hide the middle name field if they say they only have a first name or something like that? You can do all of that stuff, prompt it all, and it can do all of that stuff. So all the stuff that you had to do in learning the nuances of Better Forms, we can use AI and tune those things out and drill that in or dial that interface in. We also want to be able to, we're not sure about this, but we want to be able to generate assistance for actions. Assistance, I think they're supposed to be, not assistance, but same difference almost. So for actions, so for something like when I'm going to here, if I generate an action script, like how can we incorporate AI here? Because this is really understandable. We've done some early experiments where we've just given it big long action scripts and said, create some new, make some changes, and it does a really good job of changing the stuff. So we can use AI in here as well. I think personally, the way everybody is using AI is wrong. What I mean by that is everybody's using AI like this. Even AWS has a panel along the side with their Amazon Q and whatever it is, and they're using AI like this. But I think what we need to do is the next order of AI will be that we don't even see it and we're just doing stuff and it's just helping us along. I think that's where we need to go. I don't know what that's going to look like, and I don't think anybody's invented that yet, but that's what I'd like to see. And I really feel the need for it in here. Like, how does AI help me here? Should it prompt and say, hey, I think you should, this action is not the best practice, or you should add some other thing in here, or maybe add a scroll, whatever it is. And that experience, I think, is going to be the next big one. And then I want on here. AI can chunk away at this stuff really, really well. It can add, like if I gave this to ChatGPT and I said, add a middle name field, I don't even know what this is, right? I said, add a middle name field or something. Okay, so it's an input field here. I think you could do that really well.
That was gonna be my suggestion. Working over the weekend, I'm like, oh, it's all in HTML in the the previewer. But I'm like, man, I would like to just add an input field. Validate that input field instead of having to do it all in HTML.
Yeah, absolutely. Interesting enough, you can do a lot of value. You can almost build.
Oh yeah, it did it all my validation HTML. Yeah.
Yeah, but it'd be nice to have to have these elements and take advantage of all of the underlying stuff that Better Forms has, and bigger scope of things too. So that's where we see that going to. We also envision it right here as well. What was this latest? Where's my, oh, sorry, I'm in the wrong app here. I must have killed that. So let me go to here. We also see it right here, adding it in here. So here's that same page, right? And we envision like this middle name field. I want to just be able to say, change the label on the middle name field to say, or sorry, on the my input field or this field, change the label on this field to say first name. And it should be smart enough to jump in there and, and change it kind of thing. Right. That's where we'd like to go. But that requires some fine tuning. We can't just use the default
Charles, is this editor available yet?
almost.
Okay.
Almost, yeah. It's pretty much there, but there's a few things you can't use it for production. But it does produce real results. There's that page there. And Michael just added a cool feature here, and let's see if it's working. P hyphen, and then you're trying to adjust the padding so you can kind of drill it in. That's kind of neat. All right, so there and so on. That's kind of neat for playing around with colors and stuff like that. You're not sure what color to put, and you can mouse up and down in there. Very, very close to being usable. There's a few little bugs and things like that are getting worked out, but this is our next major focus now, is to push this out the door. We wanted to do the assistant last month and this month, hopefully.
I have another quick question about the assistant.
Mhm.
When you're in the HTML editor for the assistant, can you ask it to check your code for conflicting CSS tags or
Yeah, that's great. Yes and
because
no.
I'm really not that good at CSS and I'm
Nobody
and
is.
so and there's so
So,
many different tags that can do the same things or similar things, and it's very frustrating.
right. Yes
Or
and no.
one tag will overwrite another tag and I'm not aware of it and I can't figure out why my page isn't displaying right.
Right. So if you have two things, like you have here, like I don't know, just a sec. Make this lion avatar round, add a panel behind it with rounded corners and a drop shadow, and add a title called lion and a description that says something about lions to the right. Okay, let me just do something like this.
Yeah, so my biggest problem was I had two different text
Yeah.
definition CSS tags that were one was overwriting the other and I couldn't figure out which one was working.
Yeah. So if you have something like P-0 here, right? And you say, well, I see P padding's 4, but this
Yeah,
padding's 0,
yeah.
right? This one is overriding that one. They have the same what's called specificity, uniqueness or value weight, I guess.
So
And
which one overwrites the last one?
it's not really predictable.
Oh, that's
It's
the
it's
problem.
not totally guaranteed. Let's just say that. But you will get good at identifying those, because it's like saying, if in the back days of, say, WordPerfect, you had a bold tag and a
Oh God, yeah.
italics tag and stuff
Show
like
codes
that, right?
in WordPerfect
Yeah.
on an
And if
old
you had
PC.
two of those together, you'd have
Yeah.
to be able to identify that. It's the same sort of thing. You can ask the assistant to say, hey, why is my, here, let me just go P-0. Why is my padding of 4 not showing? And try something like that. Padding of 4 is being overwritten by another padding of 0. So it's identified that and it's just fixed it. So you can do stuff like that.
I use that all weekend. Literally, if I didn't like something, I just said, "Hey, fix this," or
Yeah.
why ain't I seeing that?" And it did it perfectly every time.
It's the feedback loop is really powerful. Like, add some margin around my card and make the background like a dark slate color, but keep my card white. It's really decent for that kind of stuff, for those little corrections. It's interesting because it looks like it's decided to center it as well, which I didn't ask for. And it also made this full width, which I didn't. I actually said margin around. I didn't say above and below.
No, it
So,
was the talk though. Like the voice recognition got add submergent.
oh, oh yeah. What's that? I don't know what that means, but it must mean something. So
Yeah.
red submerge. Oh my gosh, I don't even speak. So anyhow, you can get an idea. So. Alrighty, I think that's gonna wrap up first quit. I think that's gonna wrap up our stuff. That is our next steps of where we're trying to go. What I would like to hear is how, in terms of tools, not in terms of stuff in better forms, I got a pretty good idea about that, but around tools that you use for your clients, how can we what can we build that allow you to use more AI related stuff for your clients? Like, for example, we made that streaming API. If you have ideas, we'd love to hear them.
Yeah, Charles,
Yes.
maybe FileMaker is coming up with that in new version, but I do have, yeah, I have small chunks of data that I would like to push towards an AI tool, and then tell it, okay, can you analyze it and give me back some parameters on that chunk of data, right? But I guess there are limits, of course, on what you can send in regarding tokens and the cost and everything. But how could we handle that? Could it? You showed just a second ago. You showed that data stores, or what was it? Data models. I would like to have sort of small chunks of my data or my client's data to be said. Okay, so this is your monthly sales, for instance, or your stock, and I would like to give you a stock advice on what to purchase in next coming few weeks, right? So
Right.
take a chunk of data, send it in, and get an advice back.
Yeah. So there's a few things there. There's a bunch of different ways of doing stuff. Let's take the concern of moving data and putting it in the cloud. And let's drop that because that's going to fall off in time. It's just because it's new for everybody. And everybody will build confidence, just like we all use online banking. And at one time in the 1700s, people kept their stuff with their money in their sock, right? So let's get rid of the security thing and on the safety stuff like that for now. You can have your data sitting in FileMaker in the sense of being able to find stuff. So we have the ability to do these vector searches that's coming. And that's pretty powerful because that allows you to have data, but you can't do insights on it like that, right? And that's something that I think you'll still have to send the data off to some LLM. What you can do though, depending on the speed of change of your data, is you can pre-upload your data as a file to say OpenAI. Then from there, you can reference that file and it'll tokenize it, embed it, and then you can reference it and it can do stuff on that. You can even create what's called an assistant, which is a little bit more fancy prompt. And that fancy prompt can do things like generate pieces of code and it'll do it in real time on their server to analyze. Let's say you wanted it to give me the total of everybody living in the Netherlands. All right. And you have some data table there. It can calculate that and return that data to you. So it can do all the processing over there. And so that's pretty powerful there too. For the generative side, you could take your FileMaker data. Like this is hypothetical. I'm just throwing out something that's possible to do. You could say, I'm interested in sending out an email on a stock recommendation to all the people who are wealthy. So then the AI can come back because it knows it can get people and it knows the fields and it can say, give me a search in FileMaker of everybody who has a high willingness to buy. So that's a very subjective thing based on some client contacts. This client, you might have a note in your CRM that says, this client doesn't like to purchase, this client does, right? So it can find that. And the cost is over a certain amount. So you know, their income is over, say, 100, whatever. And then it returns that data back. And it can return that smaller set of data to the cloud. Then it can generate an email, and you could stream that email back into your end device, right? Your browser. So that's kind of an example of like stuff going back and forth a few times. But I think I think there's the two takeaways there, if I'm understanding fully, you know, is you can do the search in FileMaker with the vector-based search, or a traditional FileMaker search for numbers and things like that. And then you can secondarily create a giant data set, fairly large, and throw it up as a file into OpenAI and access it that way as well. And there's different costs involved in that. If the LLM decides it doesn't need to look that up based on your prompt, they won't charge you. If it needs to look it up, it will still charge you for the tokens, but it won't charge you for the embedding of the first time, only the first time. So there's some like different rules. I can't remember them all, but it's all in the docs as well.
I'll give it a try.
Is the AI capability restricted for BS Citizen subscription? A little bit. You can get almost all the same things as Citizen subscription. The only thing is you don't have the visual AI. Incidentally, the visual AI uses our API proxy, but we don't actually download the file. So the Better Forms file proxy, upload proxy that we added, I don't know, about a year ago or something like that, it basically only hosts that file for 24 hours and then it's automatically deleted. So what we do is we take the file, we upload it, it gives us back a URL, we pass that URL to OpenAI. OpenAI fetches that automatically from the bucket, and it gets it. We never even see it, the image that you take for the AI assistant. So I think that's kind of cool. And then it just deletes. So we kind of not bothering to manage the file at all there. All right, we're almost out of time. We didn't have a whole bunch of pre-registrations, even though we got people here today. So the deal is you got to be on the list. Alex. All right. Alex, we got something new coming. We're ordering some new leather coasters. We just sourced them out. So Madeleine will get you on the list for that. I think I gave you some stuff when I saw you last time. And I think she just popped some other stuff in there as well. So
that's awesome. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks for your support. All righty. I'm gonna close these things. If anybody's got any other questions.
Thank you, Charles.
Thank you. Here's something here. Sorry, this is kind of cool. I don't know if I have it in here. Let me just check. I don't know if I have it in this one or not. But what I did is I added Chart.js library, the CDNs. And then I told the AI assistant, using the data format for Chart.js, create, you know, such and such data. And then I went over to and then in the JSON, and then I went over to the HTML and I said, create. I have Chart.js already installed, Vue Chart.js already installed. Create charts that do this, this, and this, and then there's your dashboard. It was pretty cool. Jesse just posted. I don't know if I can post it here, but Jesse just posted a picture of something that he made, a dashboard that we made in a call like that, and it looks pretty neat. It's like virtually. We actually took a screenshot of the template that he was looking up. He looked up some template pre-designed thing, and he says, I really like this template. I want to put it at the top. So he took a screenshot of it, used the AI assistant to generate it, and then use Chart.js, Chart.js in there. So that was pretty cool. All right. I'm going to stop that share here. All right, I am going to stop our recording now here, and thanks once again. We'll hang out. You're welcome to hang out a little bit, but thanks everybody for coming out. Sorry we didn't have a ton prepared there. It was just kind of off the cuff on how we built that. I hope it gives you enough information and background information that you can start building your own stuff. If you're looking to build some type of streaming thing, give me a call, give me a ping. We'll brainstorm together. Happy to share my my findings with you.